Thanksgiving, a spiritual practice for ordinary time. And ordinary time is that time in between the great Christian feasts and festivals. We are about to Advent, so this will be our last time in ordinary time. Hi, I'm Dr. K.P. McKee. I'm the founder and executive director of A Spacious Place, Creativity and Spirituality Center. We're glad you're with us today. And as we go through this practice together, we invite your questions and comments because we want this to be a conversation and we would love to hear from you. Maybe some ideas about what you do to give thanks during this season of the year. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and you need just a few supplies for this. It would be helpful if you had a book of Psalms. You will want this template from our website that you can go on and download. And you can also use Psalm 8 itself, and I will tell you the places where you're going to fill in your own thoughts. Some kind of a writing utensil. And if you have one and can access it, a thesaurus is awesome for this particular practice. I know there's a really good one online, but you can also get the old style in the book. So praise, there are different kinds of psalms, and depending on what Bible scholar you ask, it could be anywhere from 3 to 20 something. We're going to focus in today on two forms of psalms, the praise psalm and the thanksgiving psalm. And the psalm that we're going to be working with, I think, can fit into two categories. And just so you can get a sense of the difference between a praise psalm and a thanksgiving psalm, I'd like to share this quote from C.S. Lewis. Gratitude, or praise, exclaims very properly, "How good of God to give me this." That's thanksgiving. Adoration, which is praise, says, "What must be the quality of being whose far off and momentary coruscations are like this? One's mind turns back up the sunbeam to the sun." So a gratitude poem is also a thanksgiving poem. An adoration poem is a poem of praise. And if you're like me, you had to look up what coruscations are, which basically means a beam of light. So we're going to work with Psalm 8 today, and we're going to make it our own. And this is not about rewriting Scripture. This is about taking in Scripture as an inspiration for our own kind of thanksgiving. It's kind of like giving yourself a frame to work within for our thanksgiving. So let's just begin by taking some breaths and getting centered right now. And it helps me to get both of my feet on the floor so I feel balanced in my chair. And you can cast your eyes down or even close them. You want to move your breathing from high up here, where it's our nervous place to breathe, down to what we call our belt buckle breathing. So let's just take a few breaths together. And we want to slow down our breathing and relax our shoulders. And while we are doing this, we can enjoy Jill Coy's beautiful piano music in the background. What I did was I took Psalm 8 and I left blank some of the specifics that it mentions so that we could put in our own thoughts and use our own kind of language as we interact with this beautiful, beautiful psalm. And for the purposes of moving through this, I went ahead and did mine, and I'm going to fill it in now with ink, which I've done with pencil. So as we begin, the first one is "Oh," and I'm going to say "Holy Beloved" for a title of deity. "Our," and then a word for absolute ruler, and I used "majesty." Think holy Mad Lib for this particular spiritual practice. You are filling in blanks with new words to help you think more deeply about what the text is saying. And then the next one is a word for exalted. So I used awesome. And then the next blank is word for created order, and I simply use the word creation. This is where, if you have a thesaurus, you can just have a ball looking at awesome words for these things. And then a word for grandeur, and I used eminence with an E. And then the highest point we can see looking up, I used the word firmament. And then there are two places where you're going to name some innocent beings. So my daughter has a cat named Ruthie, so I'm using Ruthie. And then my other daughter had a guinea pig named Carrot Cake. So I'm going to use those two here. This is how we personalize this Thanksgiving form. Then a word for fortress. So I used bastion. That always makes me think of A Mighty Fortress, the beautiful hymn. And then we have a word for attackers. So I used combatants. Bring your own voice to this practice. Use words that feel like you. And then we have a word for adversary, and I use nemesis. And a word for retaliator, so I used revengers. When you go back and read this passage, these words that you're replacing here are going to pop out at you, and they're going to have more power because you've worked with them a little. Then creation when seen looking up outside. So I mentioned galaxies. That was in the highest reaches of space I could imagine. And then heavenly bodies, 2. So I did dwarf planets. And I did meteors. I learned that meteors are the ones that don't fall to Earth, and meteorites are the ones that do. And then word for something that's been secured. So I said established. All right. Then we have a word for our species, so humans. And then a word that means that something is aware of. So I said attentive to. Feel free to use more than one word. Make it flow for you. This is your faith. And then a word for human beings, so simply persons. And then that you have concern for. So I said have compassion. Then a word for heavenly beings. So I just simply said divine beings. And you can go to your thesaurus or dictionary and look at these words and say, what shade of meaning is meaningful to you? A word for being enthroned. So I said anointed. I love the action of anointment and how the picture that creates in my mind. A word for grandeur. I used glory. And then a word for dignity. And I love the word gravitas, so I used that one. Then word for command, so I simply used power. And then to mean in the care of, so I said in their hands. Which is a euphemism for to take care of something. And then I have some references to animals. So 2 farm animals, so I went with sheep and cattle. And then wild animals, so I went with deer because there are deer close by where we are and we see them fairly frequently. Then 3 types of birds, so I went with robins, jays, these are things that I see out my back window, and mockingbirds, the state bird of Texas. And then 3 types of fish, so I said salmon, clownfish because they're awesome, and minnows to remind myself that God looks after the tiny things too. And then a word for a route. So I said waterways since we were talking about something that lives in the sea. Then we're simply repeating what we did up here. A word for deity, holy beloved. And a word for absolute ruler, majesty. And then a word for exalted, awesome. And a word for all creation, and I'm simply saying creation. And you can apply this to any psalm. Yeah, I'm getting ready to show it. Read it in a minute here. You can do this with any psalm that has meaning for you or one that maybe you're wrestling with. The Psalms are so powerful because they're so honest and raw. You see some people just flat out angry and wanting somebody to be taken down by God. And to be able to be honest about how we feel about things like that helps us move through those feelings to a place of thanksgiving. So if you found this practice helpful, please invite friends to join us when we do this again. Also like us on Facebook, and you can view this again on Facebook, on YouTube, and on our website, www.aspaciousplace.com. And the next time we'll get together, December the 2nd, same time, 2:30, will be the first day of Advent. So we'll begin doing Advent spirituality and creativity practices there. So for our closing prayer, I would like to read what I have written based on and inspired by Psalm 8. O holy beloved, your majesty, how awesome is your name in all creation. You have set your eminence above the firmament. Out of the mouths of Ruthie and Carrot Cake, you have founded a bastion because of your combatants, to silence the nemesis and the revengers. When I look at your galaxies, the work of your fingers, the dwarf planets and the meteors that you have established, what are humans that you are attentive to them, persons that you have compassion for them? Yet you have made them a little lower than divine beings and anointed them with glory and gravitas. You have given them power over the works of your hands, and you have put all things in their hands, all sheep and cattle, and also the deer, the robins, jays, mockingbirds, and the salmon, clownfish, and minnows of the sea, whatever passes along the waterways of the seas. O holy beloved, our majesty, how awesome is your name in all creation.